Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. And if you are just joining me today, this is the live stream where we talk about careers, everything to do with job interviews, everything to do with how to get hired, essentially. Writing resumes, discovering jobs, applying for jobs, all methods of getting a job, including networking, things like this. I have a live stream coming up this week. There's one this week and there's one next week. One is on networking, and then the next one goes deeper into informational interviews, specifically how to conduct them. So that's also a method of getting a job, apart from accomplishing a bunch of other things that are very advantageous for you. But we will be getting into that. But this is primarily a Q&A. So if you are here, get in the chat. You should see a chat box right next to my beautiful face if you're watching this on mobile or on the desktop. And get in the chat box and let me know what your questions are, what I can help you with as it relates to, or as it pertains to your career, whether a career as an employee or any other type of career. It's all on the table. I'll help you if I can. Yes, I just stepped out a moment ago for a breath of fresh air, and holy crap, is it hot. I'm in Winnipeg, Canada, and it is hot. The summers here are very hot. The winters are very cold. And we have this huge temperature range. And it's like a 75-degree temperature range. That's Celsius, by the way, 75 degrees Celsius. Temperature swing between the height of summer and the dead of winter. So I'm just not used to the heat yet. Holy crap. It was like a heat wave. Anyway, get in the chat, write me your questions, and I will help you. In the meantime, I want to thank my members. Some people have joined my channel as a member. Other people have supported me on Patreon, supported this channel on Patreon. So to all those people, thank you very much. It's wonderful to see that kind of support. And also to my subscribers. And while I'm waiting for the first question to roll on in, I'll just draw everybody's attention to this, my Get Hired course. If you are lost when it comes to finding a job, you're not really down with the things you have to do, the things that you could do to help find you a good job, get that course, because I walk you through my recommended method from beginning to end with templates, and I cover several different methods of getting a job. Okay, there's the default method where you apply for a job based on seeing a job posting that's been posted publicly, usually on the internet somewhere, and you respond to it with an application. That's the default method. There's other methods too that are far more promising. Usually they are under the umbrella of networking of some kind. Okay. And I walk you through a couple of those too, from beginning to end. And if you're wanting to take your first steps into that world, but don't quite know how to do it, that course is for you. So check it out, link in description if you are interested in that. Other than that, there are 8 of you here. I'm still waiting for questions. If you have a question, please get in the chat and let me know, and I will be happy to help you. The drink of choice today is ginger ale, diet ginger ale. Because I'm watching my figure, as you see. I wasn't always the model of physical perfection that I am now. And it comes at a price, but hey, it's a heavy burden to bear, but we do what we can. Let's see here. The winner of the first question in the chat is KH. KH says, how do you pass a good interview for a process operator job? Well, I suppose the first counter question I would have to you is, what exactly is a process operator? What industry are we talking about here? Is this an administrative thing? Is this an industrial thing? Without knowing the context or the industry, it's kind of hard to give any specifics. So if you could get back to me with that, that would be a big help. But just to kind of give you some generic stuff, okay, not knowing the context, is that if you are going to a traditional job interview where you have a recruiter asking you questions, okay, recruiters, they have their own agenda of what they're looking for, okay? There's certain things that they look for that are valid, that make sense, okay? And usually what they're looking for are things that reduce the riskiness of you as a candidate, okay? So, for example, to give you an idea, if you have a history of quitting jobs after 6 weeks, let's say the last 5 jobs you had, you worked at that job for 6 weeks and then quit abruptly and then got another job, right? Let's say that was your history, okay? Now, if they saw this and they discovered this about you, the natural conclusion is that you have a higher risk of quitting after 6 weeks if they were to hire you, right? So you become a high risk candidate, right? So that would be a risk factor for a recruiter. And their job is all about reducing the risk of the candidate that they then recommend to get the job. Okay. So that's kind of how traditional or standard job interviews these days are geared around. They ask you questions that are designed to reveal things about you that signal if you are a risk. Okay. What they always say is that they're looking for a fit for the job. And when you hear that word, you might think it means, your suitability, your passion for doing that kind of work. That might be intuitively what you might think that means, but really, when they use that word, they're thinking about more of the risk factors and reducing your riskiness as a candidate. So a lot of their questions will be geared around that, and that's what they're going to do. Now, the way it works is that usually, especially in the first interview, sometimes there is only one interview, but a lot of times there's more than one interview. And then that, if you pass, say, 2 interviews, the next step is like a background check. You are going to be eliminating yourself by what comes out of your mouth. Okay. So knowing what a recruiter might find to be a risky thing that you say that might paint you in a bad light, you would know what not to say. You would not to reveal that. Okay. Now, you don't want to lie outright, but you don't want all the bad things about you to be the first thing you say, because we all have bad things about us, right? Anybody can say something that would make it look like they're not a good candidate for a job. I don't care who you are. You could be the perfect candidate for the job, but there's going to be something about you that if you say it and that's their first impression of you, they will not select you, right? So knowing this, we try and not say those things, and we try and say other things instead that are simultaneously true, but they also don't constitute a red flag, right? So that's how you pass any kind of interview. So that would include being a process operator too. KH says industrial for refinery operations. Okay. Well, I haven't worked in a like oil and gas, refining industry. So I don't have firsthand experience with that exact job. But what I would say, what I imagine it to be, is that you're a skill trade. Okay. You're a specialized skill trade. So the things that I would look for if I was recruiting somebody for that role would be, apart from your technical skills, okay, having all your qualifications, that's kind of a no-brainer. If you are called in for an interview, the assumption is that you are technically qualified. They're not going to call in someone from an interview that they have doubts if they're technically qualified to do the job. Okay? So the fact that you're at the interview, that signals that they think that you are technically qualified. Assuming everything on your resume is true, you should be able to do the job. The only question now is, are you psychologically suited to it? Okay, that's the big question. So, number one, how do you pass? Well, first of all, you have the right attitude. You have the attitude of a typical process operator for, a refinery. You have, you're not like antisocial, you're friendly, you fit in with all the other people in that role. Okay. And also, it also gives the psychological good first impression that, you're suited for it. You look like you're the person that belongs in that role. So all you have to do is not talk yourself out of a job. The second thing is you need to put their mind at ease that you are reliable, you are trustworthy, and you actually want to do the job. Okay. One standard test is that, people want money, right? But they don't necessarily want to do the job that they're interviewing for. Okay. Now, recruiters aren't completely stupid. They know this. They know that, okay, you're here certainly for the money. We are not interested in hiring someone who's only in this for the money. We are interested in hiring a candidate that actually wants to do this type of work, and they want to work in this type of environment. And once they are here, they will A, enjoy it, they will B, fit in, and C, they won't create any problems. Okay, that's the type of person we're looking to hire. So you have to satisfy them on all of those points. Okay. Now, how do you do that? Okay, well, for example, that's one example is saying, like what do recruiters care about the most? They care about years of experience. If you've done that kind of work for like 10 years, and at least 5 of those years were like all in the same place, that's signaling that you're suited to the work. You can cut it. If you couldn't cut it, they would have fired you before 5 years, presumably. You don't mind doing it because you can tolerate it. And as long as you weren't fired for creating some incident, that tends to suggest that you didn't bring in a whole host of issues and troubles when you were in that role, right? So that's a great thing about experience. Now, if you can demonstrate that, great. If you can't demonstrate that, you're going to have to bring up examples from other things you have done that suggest those things. You're not going to create issues. You're suited to the work. You're trustworthy and reliable, and so on. Okay. Obviously, there's a lot to get into, but hopefully that should give you a general answer for this kind of thing. Because those are the things that recruiters are actively looking for. They're probing for when they're talking to you. They won't ask you outright, "Are you reliable?" Right? They're not going to say that. What they're going to do is they're going to say, "Give me an example of something you did or whatever." And in telling that story, you're going to be demonstrating that you're reliable. Stuff like that. Okay. In Dominicano de la Pie, is that French? Says, when the interviews, they asking, "Tell me about you," what's the better way you respond? Like, are you saying when they ask you, "Tell me about you," what's the best way to respond? I've done many videos on that, actually. Well, here's the deal. You could say literally anything about you, right? You could talk about your vital statistics. I'm this tall. I'm this heavy. This is my blood type, right? You could talk about your hobbies. You could talk about what you did as a child. You could talk about your ambitions. You could talk about the type of personality you have. You could talk about your hobbies and what you do. You could talk about your family. I mean, literally all of those would be answers to that question, right? The problem is people don't know what to say. And it's a stupid question, let's be honest. It's so general as to be useless. What they're doing is the recruiter who asks this question is probing for a specific thing, okay? And they will tell you that they're looking for different specific things depending on the person. Some people, they want to hear about your interests. Some people want to hear about your personality. Some people want to hear about your passions. Some people want to hear about how you have all the things that they're looking for in this job. You have no way of knowing what that particular individual recruiter is wanting to hear when they ask you one of these stupid general questions like this. So what are they looking for? They're looking for things they want to hear. How do you know what they want to hear? Well, the only clue you have is the job posting. Okay. Now, in the job posting, they've listed their requirements. They said, we're looking for someone who's got this, and this, right? Now, they're probably looking for other things besides the ones that they've explicitly stated in the job description. But they have stated several things that they are looking for, okay? So how you answer this question is you start talking about how you have those, or if you don't have them in their entirety, you at least have enough of it that it's not going to be a problem, okay? So for example, they say, we're looking for someone who's got 5 years experience in this, all right? Now, if you have 5 years experience, you could say, well, I've got 5 years experience in this. They're interested in hearing about that, right? Because they've said it in the job posting. Now, let's say you don't have 5 years experience in that, okay? Maybe you only have 2 years experience in that. But you can say, like, look, I've got 2 years experience in this. But here's the thing. I've worked in those 2 years. I was rotated around to different positions within that area. And so I saw a lot in those 2 years. So I feel that I have like the equivalent of about 10 years experience, because normally it would take you 10 years approximately to rotate through those positions. I did it in 2. So, and I've worked with people who have had 10 years experience, 20 years experience. And it's not like I was the junior guy who didn't know anything. I mean, I was doing the same job as them and I was performing basically the same as them. So I feel that I can really hold my own when it comes to having experience in the role. Something like that. Like you make up some story that says, okay, look, I only got this, but it's not going to be a problem. I got experience. Right? And that's how you answer that question. You just go down the job requirements and you say, I got this, I got that, I got that. And that's about me. That's what, it's relevant about me. And then you don't talk for more than about a minute or so. Okay. Just give them sort of an overview. I got this. Right. And there you go. And that's usually a good way of answering that. Linda says, when a quiet young man of 18 is terminated for an invalid reason, how does he answer the question of why he left his previous employment? It's a small town. Once again, I have a very popular video out that answers precisely that. Short answer is like, okay, look, here's the deal. When you ask a typical recruiter for advice and say, what should I say when a recruiter asks me that question? Why did you leave your last job? And what if I was fired? What if I was terminated? For cause. What do I say? Do I just admit it? Or because that might make me look bad? Or do I say something else? Here's the deal. Most recruiters will tell you, just be honest. Just say like, look, if you were fired, say you were fired and then say what you learned about that experience. I didn't do a very good job and I was fired, but I learned that I have to do a good job. So I've redoubled my efforts, and every job, you can't really say every job I've had since then, I've done a better job because this was your last job, right? That's what recruiters will say when asked this. Number one, they have a conflict of interest because they're basically asking, they're giving you advice on how you can serve them. That's why a lot of them just say, just be honest. Just tell the recruiter everything they want to know. And, that will be the best thing for you. Wrong. It won't. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying lie, but you can be selective of what you say. Okay. Now, if they ask you this question, you were terminated. What I would do is I would avoid saying I was fired. The reason I say this is because a lot of recruitment theory that recruiters are trained in, it's based on a couple of principles. One of the principles is that past behavior predicts future behavior. That's the reason they ask behavioral questions in job interviews. They say, tell me about a time when you had to do this. What did you do? Now, why are they asking you about something you did at another company in the past? They're asking it not because they care about that other company. They're asking it because they're going on the theory that if you behaved that way in that situation in the past, if we were to hire you and put you in that situation again, you would behave the same way. That's exactly what you would do in the future. Okay? So past behavior predicts future behavior. That's like an assumption they're making. Now, is that true? Well, sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. The way you handled something when you were a kid is not the way you would necessarily handle it now, because you've learned since then how to do a better job. Okay? When we come to this question, why were you, why did you leave your last job and you were fired? And you say, I was fired. The problem is that, once again, they're going to assume that if you performed badly and were terminated with cause, that if we hire you, you're at a higher risk to perform badly and then have to be terminated for cause, right? This is the problem. So what I would do is I would try and avoid as much as possible in saying you were fired. What you could say is well, listen, that job, if this is somewhat true, you could say this, that job turned into a different job. Like I was hired with the assumption that, this was my job description. I'd be doing this kind of work. And unfortunately, that kind of morphed over time and it turned into something that I really had no interest in doing. So eventually, when that happened, it didn't work out. And that's why I'm here, because I'm looking more for the thing that I was originally hired for. And that sounds like this job here, what you guys are doing. And that's what I'm excited to do and I'm interested in doing. So I didn't actually lie. I didn't say I wasn't fired, but I just kind of tried to avoid saying I was fired and instead made it about this job and how you're excited to be here and you want to do this work. And, while simultaneously giving a more sort of understandable reason why you left, the job changed into something you were not originally hired for and you had no interest in doing. So anyway, that's how I would do it. I would not say you're fired, and I would try and give a sort of, talk more about the reasoning behind why you left. You could say, well, maybe this is true. Another scenario, the original person that hired me left and I got a different boss. I really got along well with my original boss, but the boss they replaced that person with was no good. We did not click as individuals, unfortunately. We had conflicting ideas of how things should be run, and what they were wanting me to do was not what I had originally signed on for. And unfortunately, because I didn't really mesh with them, it didn't work out. And so I left. Something like that. That's how I would phrase it. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. It's a very long-winded response I gave you, but hopefully that makes sense. Keep the questions coming, people. Sandeep Singh says, what is the good time to switch an organization based on the carrier growth? What is carrier growth? Are you talking about like a carrier, like a company in the transportation industry? Is that what you're referring to? Or did you mean career, based on career growth? Well, that depends on what there isn't a blanket response to that. Okay. There just isn't. You have to consider your situation. I know it's not what you want to hear probably, but it's true. Now, one of the big factors is, have you learned everything there is to learn in your position? Or have you learned everything you have an interest in learning? That would be maybe a more pertinent question, where you are. It doesn't make sense to jump if you're in a job that's pertinent to your career, where you want to end up, but you still haven't mastered it yet, right? It doesn't really make sense. If you're going to move sideways to do the same job for a different company for more money, then that might make sense, right? You also have to take your mental health into consideration. You want to progress and you want to learn and you want to climb the ladder, but it's not worth, destroying your mental health over. So if you are working in a toxic place with a toxic boss and a toxic environment, it might not make sense to stay there, right? Regardless of how much you've learned, and all that. It's just bad, right? So you've got to really look at the specific situation. You can't really make a blanket generalization on these things. But those would all be factors, right? If you're in a place where, it's good, and but you've learned everything there is to learn in that position, and there are no obvious immediate opportunities for advancement, then maybe it would make sense now to start looking for a job outside of your company that you can move to, either a promotion that gives you a step up, or at the very least you go sideways for more money, right? So, I had a corporate career where I got increasingly senior positions by jumping to other companies. I did it that way. the companies that I worked in were very seniority driven. And the problem was I was a junior person, and the people ahead of me were like, there's a lot of people ahead of me in the seniority thing. So, if they promoted people by seniority, I would have had to be there 20 years or something to get a promotion. So it's like, no dice. So I jumped to another company where they had an opening. And I did that a couple of times. So that's one way to do it. Anyway, that's the end of the questions. If you guys have any questions, get in the chat and ask them, because this is pure Q&A. I'm just here to answer questions. There's less people today. I think my YouTube channel has fallen from favor in the last week or something. Last week, for example, I had so many questions I could barely keep up. I was going really fast. I don't know. YouTube decides these things. They kind of promote one channel, they promote another one, and then all of a sudden another one, all your views just dry up for no reason. And, or maybe there is a reason, I don't know. But, so there's less people today, but that's okay. If you're here, let me know what you're struggling with or what your questions are, and I will be happy to help. I'm just all proud of myself because I got my second camera here. So you got another action-packed view of me that makes the whole thing more engaging. Yeah, it's an interesting space. There's many ways to get a job. And usually what people do when they're in their 20s, when they're kind of starting out in this stuff, if they've never been taught any other way in school, is they go the path of looking for publicly posted jobs and applying for those with applications. That's the default thing for a lot of people. It is not the best way to get a job. It's actually a pretty terrible way to get a job. Most people who have jobs get them through networking, some form of networking, because the idea is that, there's a reason why personal recommendations carry weight. I could hire a stranger off the street to do this thing that's very important to me, or I could hire someone who has been recommended to me by somebody I trust and that I know really well and that I've worked with for years. And if they say that this person is good, that's not a guarantee, but it at least guarantees that I will look at them seriously. I'll give them a chance seriously. And then if they have what it takes, then, I'll probably hire them. Like, that's the idea, right? So, yeah. My chat kind of skipped there. I see there's a question here, but not in my little feed that I actually go off. So hopefully that'll clear itself up in a minute. Anyway. Yeah, it's like most people get a job through networking. The other part of this is that, when an organization has a very desirable job, it pays really well, you work in a great place, the job itself is relatively easy, you don't do a lot of backbreaking work, you get to work with some great people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very desirable job. They don't need to spend money to publicize that, because already most people that that hear about it want it and put themselves forward for it. You don't have a lack of candidates putting themselves forward. You have many, many contenders because it's a desirable job. And that will start with your internal people. Like, when they hear that job is going to be vacant soon, they'll put in for it and say, like, yeah, So even external people that hear about it, if you work at a company and you're constantly in contact with people at other companies, right? Companies that provide services to you, or, they're in the business environment. They're maybe the regulators or the competition or the customers or, just any kind of player. When they hear that job is going to be vacant soon, they will put themselves forward for it. So You don't have to spend money hiring an HR company to publicize this job and promote it, right? Because you don't have this problem of like a lack of candidates. So the good jobs tend to be filled through networking for that reason also, right? And if it's like a highly desirable job, you don't need 1,000 candidates to choose from. That's just a headache. Even if you had to go through, say, 50 resumes, you have to read 50 resumes. That's quite a challenge, right? Most people don't do that, right? If you only get like 5 resumes, you'll maybe read 5 resumes, no problem. But if you get 50, right? Now, the other thing is that if you're getting resumes, if you're getting applications from the public, you don't know. I mean, these people could be lying about everything in their resume. They could not understand the job that they're applying for. You don't know, right? So you want like any way to make this process more efficient. What you would like ideally is someone just to say, here is one candidate that's perfect for it. You can talk to them and you'll see that they know their stuff and that you like them. In addition, I know them, I've worked with them for many years, and I'm telling you they're good. And you trust me, so by extension, you should trust this person. Okay, so that's what you'd like. That's the easiest thing. You don't have to spend any time on it. You don't have to spend any money on it. You don't have to sit through rounds and rounds and rounds of job interviews. You don't have to scrutinize resumes. You don't have to do tons of background checks. It's quick, it's cheap, it's simple, and you got a good person, right? So that's why people would love to fill lots of jobs through networking. Now, if you are tuned into this, you can take advantage of that. And that's why I highly encourage all job seekers to learn. If you've never been taught how to do networking or to learn this, to do it. Okay? It's not what you think. It's a lot easier than most people think, and you don't have to be an extrovert. I'm an introvert, and I built a business using networking. It's really simple. You can use social networking. You could do it online. The vast majority of it. Okay, so where are we here? We got Sandeep Singh says, what is a good time to switch? Okay, we did that one. We got Moises. Moises says, if you have already talked about it, or do you have a video, just mention it and I will search for it. Thanks again, you are great. Okay, what are you talking about, Moises? What's the subject matter of that? It feels like I'm missing part of that. Did it not print all your chats or something? I'll be happy to. Just let me know what you're wondering about. Salvador says, is it a good idea to send an email to the interviewer after the job interview to follow up and to show interest in the position? Of course it is. Of course it is. Why would you not? Yes. The answer is yes. What I recommend is within 24 hours, send a note. Now, it's not that they like religiously read these and that they demand them and expect them. It's like a default thing, okay? And in some circles, if you don't send it, that's more of a statement because the default thing is just to send a generic thank you. All you have to do is you send an email, you say, it was a pleasure meeting you yesterday. Thank you very much for the opportunity to interview you. I'm very excited about the position. And if you do have any other questions or need any other information, please let me know. Here's my contact information. Thank you and have a great day. Just something like that. Just something very generic, right? It's kind of a no-brainer, especially if you are passionate about the job and you want it. Yes, you would do that. Okay. It also, if you're also very passionate about the job, you can also send an email, a follow-up email, say a week later, 5 days later, something like that. Maybe 1 or 2 of those just to follow up. And then you would say like just following up to see if there's been any movement or developments on this position. Once again, if you need anything else, any more information from me, please let me know. Have a great day. Something like that. Okay, if you're passionate about the job, just do it. There's no issue of like, oh no, am I pestering people by sending them that stuff? No, you're not. You're not. They kind of expect it. Okay, Aspasia, if I'm saying that right, says, when interviewers ask examples from our previous experience, like tell us how you prioritize your work or how you collaborate with others. Do you have any tips on what kind of examples we should mention? Well, any examples you should mention are going to come from you, so I can't sort of dictate an example from you. But the purpose of those questions is to see if you know your stuff, right? Like, you're interviewing for a specific position, and hopefully when you're doing the job interview, there'll be somebody in the room that has technical knowledge of that position. Okay, either it's the hiring manager, they supervise people in that role, or someone who's in that role now is also in the job interview to provide that sort of technical insight into what you're saying. Because recruiters are not trained in the jobs that they're hiring. If a recruiter is hiring for an accountant position, right? The recruiter is not trained in accounting, right? They know HR, but they don't know accounting. So if they want to see if you know your stuff when it comes to accounting questions, they won't know if your answers are good or not. So usually there'll be somebody in the room. If they want to ask you a technical type question about accounting, then that person will be in a position to judge if you know your stuff or not. So when they're asking you questions like, tell us how you prioritize your work, that sounds to me like a technical question about that role. So you would have, like, what they're looking for is they're looking for someone that says something that makes sense, that demonstrates that they actually do understand this role. If you've claimed you work in that role or you have worked in it, they're wanting some proof of that. You say you've done this for 5 years. Let's ask you a question about how to do that, and let's see if you can answer it. That's what they're asking. Okay. So give them an example. This is what I do. I do it like this. The way I prioritize my work is I look first of all for, like, I don't know, HR issues. If someone's got questions, I usually prioritize those before I do my routine daily tasks. And of my routine daily tasks, the safety items come first because they're important, or whatever. And then beyond that, I go in order of, the request comes in, so like whatever you do, right? Now, how to collaborate with others, that's a more general question, but they're looking for evidence that you know how to do it, okay? So if it were me on that particular question and they said, how do you, give me an example of how you collaborate with others? And it's like, well, the way I would answer that is I would say, well, okay, I collaborate with others, in many different ways. I have different relationships with different people, and we collaborate on different levels for different types of work. So you tailor how you behave depending on the level you're at, the type of work you're doing. In addition, I tailor how I collaborate if I know the personality type of the other person. Some people are very technical. Some people are very introverted. Some people are very detail-oriented, in which case they will want very clear boundaries between the work that I'm going to do and the work that you're going to do, and then we're going to combine them all. Other people are, they're not so detail-oriented. They're very collaborative. They want to get together and have a sort of collaborative conversation where we kick ideas around and discuss how we could maybe do things. And it's a very participative process. And if that's the type of person they are, then I engage in that, but I don't force that on people if that's not the type of collaboration that they like to do. So I switch up my style based on, who I'm working with and what the context is. Something like that. Like, now, if they have any more specific questions, you could go deeper into it. But, something like that. If you say something like that, usually the recruiter will say, okay, this person clearly has experience collaborating with other people, and they seem to have some skills there. So I don't have any concerns that if I hire them, they won't be able to play nice with everyone else and work together with all the other employees. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense, Aspasia, or Aspasia. I prefer to say Aspasia. That's very exotic. So A+ on the name. Joe Blunt says, you got the opposite name to Aspasia. Joe Blunt. Let's be blunt, Joe. I just got off an interview today. I met the business owner networking on Reddit. Okay, good. Was there a follow-up? Oh, was that in relation to the like networking type thing? Yeah, that'll be a good example. Bet says, "Hi, Bill, from Mexico City. Hola, Mexico. I've been unemployed for 3 years. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It has been very difficult for me to find, and now I want a new area of my profession. My question." Okay. Do you have a follow-up question to that, Bet? Here we go, right here. What? Initially, to adapt my resume to that search for vacancies. I want a new area of my profession. My question, what would you initially to adapt my resume to search for vacancies? Well, okay, listen, if you're applying for posted jobs, you can play that game and sort of adapt your resume. The way you would play that game is you adapt your resume, unfortunately, to each job, and not only that, you have to use their lingo. So you have to use their terms, the terms that they use. They say, we're looking for these. You have to use that terminology. In all honesty, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but I would also do other things. I would apply to some jobs in person. Okay. That can be very effective because you are demonstrating that you're passionate about the job because you're showing up in person. In addition, the person that you have an exchange with when you're there, whether it's the hiring manager or even just like a receptionist or someone like that, you now have a personal connection to them and they get to see you. They get to see you like, oh, you're professional, you're dressed appropriately, you're very polite. And not only that, just the fact that you showed up signaled that you were interested enough to do that, right? I mean, how many people do that? Not many, right? But the people who do really stand out, right? And now you're not just a resume in a pile. You're the only one of those people that they've actually met. So that gives you an edge, okay? That's one form of networking. It actually does technically fall under the umbrella of networking, but it's a very effective way to get a job. So you can adapt your resume. You can like write a custom resume, just, add some things in and reword a couple of things and then use it to apply for the job. But then instead of like applying online, like go down to the company. If it's near you, it's physically near you, go down and go to the front desk and just say, hi, I'd very much like to apply for this job. Can I drop off my resume in person here? Or would I be able to speak to the hiring manager for this role? Now, even if they say no, which they're probably going to do, you say, that's okay. Could I leave this here? And could you see that they get it? Right? And they're probably going to say yes. They'll say, sure, yeah, I can leave that there. So then what you do is you sort of go away and then you follow up by phone and you say, hello, I'm just following up. I was there yesterday or earlier today. And you follow up with the person that you're wanting to talk to, the hiring manager, and say, I'm just following up to see if you got my resume. I left it at the front desk and they told me that they'd pass it on to you. Just wondering if that actually happened. And they say, yeah, we got your resume, but I haven't really taken a good look at it yet. Say, okay, no problem, no pressure. I just want to make sure you got it. I just want you to know that I'm very passionate about the job. And if you have any questions, this is my phone number. Thank you so much for your time. That's it. Now that makes a very good first impression. Not only are you passionate enough to do all that, but they see that you're professional, you're polite, you're easy to deal with, they get along with you. I mean, that's half the battle right there. Okay. So there's other things like that you can do. So if I were you, I would learn about other ways, alternate ways of getting jobs that are very effective like that. That's like one of like 6 at least. Okay. But hopefully that makes sense. And I'm hopefully bet something comes along soon for you. Alphonse says, AKM. What does AKM mean? I'm terrible with acronyms. Hi, Bill. I'm enjoying the show. as a follow-up to a previous question, how would you deal with a boss who tells you that I did not hire you when the person who hired you is not your supervisor? Yeah, that's a wonderful situation. Your boss becomes someone who inherited you, who didn't hire you, right? And that can be a fun situation because they may not necessarily believe in you, right? Usually when the person hires you and then you report to them, usually things go well. Usually. Not always, but usually. Because they believed in you. They looked at you in the interview and they said, of all these people, I picked them, right? Well, you're not in that situation. You got a different boss now, and they didn't pick you. They inherited you, and that can lead to, some friction there. A lot of times, it can be like you can have a difference of personality, or you could have a difference of backgrounds. So, maybe you come from sales and they came from operations, or, like whatever, but you're all together and working together in this department. So, so your question was, how do you deal with that person? Well, listen, once again, I'm not a psychologist, but if it were me, there's a couple of things that you can do. First of all, there's the obvious sort of direct approach where you go up to them and you do this, when you're hopefully not going to be pestering them, like they're not right in the middle of something important. It's maybe the end of the day, or a great time to do this kind of thing is the first thing after lunch. Usually when people come back from lunch, they're like, in a good mood. They've just had a break. They've just had some food. So they're feeling pretty good. And they haven't yet launched into work again. They're just sort of coming back to their workstation or their desk or whatever. And they're just sort of going to, that's a great time to not like flag people down and say, hey, you got a minute? Usually that's a good time to do it. Especially if you do it on like a Friday, like they're feeling pretty good on a Friday. It's a Friday feeling, the weekend's coming. So you could talk to them then, and you say like, look, I just wanted to ask you about something. A couple of days ago, you came up to me, or when we were talking at my desk or whatever, you said, I did not inherit you. And I just want you to know that, you're absolutely right. You got stuck with me. And I understand how, this might not have been your idea, and I certainly might not have been your first choice. We do tend to have different personalities and different backgrounds, which, it seems to me could be a barrier to us working well together. But I just want you to know that I would very much like to have a very good working relationship with you. And I want you to regard me as a good worker. And, if you have any suggestions or requests that I do things differently that would work for you better, let me know, because as far as I can, I would like to try and accommodate you and have everything go smoothly. I just wanted you to know this. That's all. Have a great day. Something like that. And if they respond to that, you can sort of turn it into a conversation. But just saying that, the fact that you would say that, regardless of how they take it, it signals that, you're doing a good thing. You're wanting to make it work and you're wanting to be accommodating. And a lot of times people will respond well to that. Okay. Even if it doesn't go any further, there's no follow-up. They will do some good. Okay. So that's one option. Another option, I don't know if you do this, is, it's no coincidence that business people, they like to eat, like they like to have lunch or have a coffee or a drink or something with other business people. It helps your relationship. Now, as a technical, detail-oriented introvert, I didn't realize this until later on in my career. But it's incredibly powerful how you can, go and have lunch with somebody that maybe at work you don't get along with super well. But, you have to take your lunch break together, or you go out for lunch, or whatever your situation is at work. Like if you're a manager, you can go out for lunch with people. If you're a worker, you may not be able to do that, but you have a lunch break. Maybe there's a cafeteria area or something, I don't know. And you can sit together and, something like that. But what my point is that if you actually have a lunch where you talk about other things than work, you talk about sports, you talk about movies, you talk about, other common sort of things, current events, in your city, they're having a big festival. Maybe they went, maybe you went, you talk about it, stuff like that. It's amazing how it can improve your working relationship. I would never believed this until I saw it with my own eyes and I experienced it. So maybe there's a way for you to do that with the person. Just go up to your boss and say, look, are you free for lunch? Sometimes, you take your lunch over there. Do you mind if I sit with you today in the cafeteria? Is that okay? Is there any problem with that? Usually they're going to say no. You say, okay. And then talk about non-work related stuff, and ask them questions about them. Like, have you seen this movie, or have you, whatever, hobby type stuff. If you know what they do for hobbies, ask them about it. Say, I understand that, you are very into this. And then you ask them about that. And people will like talking about it. They'll open up to you. And then you'll find that your working relationship is a lot smoother. So you might want to experiment with that. That's another tool in the arsenal of being able to build great relationships with people at work. You're welcome, Aspasia. Glad it helped. Supanut? Supanut? I'm not sure how you say that. I insist upon mispronouncing everybody's names. Just a matter of principle. If I got an offer for a job, I don't know I'm capable to or not, but that the person who offered the job know I can do the job well. Should I trust my instinct or should I trust him? I don't know if there's a blanket answer to that. If somebody hired me to train sharks and they told me, they said, Bill, you're the perfect person for this. I believe in you. I still wouldn't take that job. I'm not going to train sharks. I'll get my ass kicked. I'll probably be eaten by a shark, probably in front of a crowd of people. So no, it's not a blanket thing, but for a lot of other things, if it's just maybe 10% outside your capabilities or something like that, you're kind of out of your comfort zone, but it might be a little bit of a stretch, but it isn't unreasonable that you could do the job, then I would say go with it. Unless there's some mitigating circumstances that's like a real reason why you wouldn't, or you don't believe them or something, I would say go for it. Whenever you get a job, there's always a worry in the back of your mind that, I've never done this exact thing before. I've never worked at this company before. I've done that job, but in other places, I don't know. I've never done it here, right? And there's a little bit of, a voice in your head, I think, that says like, I don't know, right? But to a certain degree, we try and overcome that and say, look, I've overcome challenges before. I've done things that I didn't know I could do, but it was kind of a stretch, but I succeeded. So I know I can overcome challenges. So it's reasonable to think that I could overcome any challenges I would get doing this job. Okay, maybe look at it like that, if that seems reasonable to you. You shouldn't trust people, okay? Like trust is earned. It's not just given out to strangers. It's not about trusting them. It's about you deciding for yourself if you have the capabilities of doing the thing that they're proposing, okay? It's not about whether you trust them. It's about what you think you can do, in my opinion. You're welcome, Bet. Butween says, what career professions are good for independent work later down the road, for example, like consulting online only? Well, consulting, in my experience, it's kind of like a face-to-face thing. But, it takes all kinds to make a world, right? So sure. Once again, that's an extremely general question, saying what professions are good for independent work. I'm trying to think of professions that would be unsuited for that. Anything that requires mass production may not be suited to that, but almost everything else, as far as I can tell, any kind of service, anything you can do yourself, like it doesn't require 3,000 people to do, is a candidate, right? You can always go independent and farm that out. Even if you're an independent contractor that only has one customer, like you could do your job, but not as an employee, as an independent third-party contractor. Like I've seen that quite a few times. You know, you're technically your own company, but you're working for this one big company like you're an employee, right? So, I mean, yeah, that's a very general question. The only thing I can say is almost every job fits into that category. Now, if you want to give me some more details, High Tree says, "Hi, Bill. I just quit my job 1 week ago." Oh, okay, so it's a pretty emotional, nerve-wracking time for you, I imagine. "I don't know what to do next. I like data analysis field, but I don't have experience. Should I study data analysis first before looking for a new job?" Well, that would depend on whether data analysis is an entry-level job or not. I mean, if it's not an entry-level job and you are not qualified to do it, then yes, it's pretty obvious you should study it first if that's what you want to do. Now, if you don't have skills in data analysis per se, but you do have things that are closely related to it, maybe you've got a degree in mathematics or something, or statistical analysis, or something like this, that would be very similar to it, that would qualify you to do the work, then you wouldn't necessarily need to go back to school to qualify for that job. So I don't know enough specifically about data analysis in the situation you're talking about to answer that to the nth degree. So you would have some research to do. The best thing to do for any question like that, knowing what qualifications do I need, right, to do something, is go to LinkedIn, okay, and you might have to get either the premium version or you get the free trial for 1 month of the premium version. Doesn't cost you anything. It turns on the full search capabilities, right? And then what you do is you do a people search for people in your region, like your country or your part of the country, that are working in that job in data analysis, the job you want, and look at their profile, look at like essentially their resume. What do they have? If they all have the same one qualification, like a degree in data analysis, if they all have that, that tends to suggest that you kind of need that to qualify to be in that job. If they don't have, that degree, then that tends to suggest that you don't need that qualification to get that type of job, right? So do that type of research, like do people searches in your region for that role and see what they have. And that'll give you an idea of what you need to qualify to be in that role. Okay, look at their experience. Like, what experience do they have? It's not going to tell you everything. It's not going to tell you personality type. It's not going to tell you networking connections. It's not going to tell you stuff like that. But what it will tell you in terms of academics and in terms of experience, it'll tell you what they have. And then you can make a more informed decision on, what you should do if you want to be in that role. Salvador says, "Thank you very much for you're absolutely welcome, Salvador." Butween says, "Is it wise to show your power level, aka competence, with a new team at work, since some are hyper vigilant and insecure and could later sabotage you behind your back?" Yeah, this is the wonderful world of office politics. Well, look, it depends. In my experience, it's not so much what you do. It depends more on how you do it. So obviously, you want to show off your abilities to a degree. Remember the old adage that if you don't say anything, people don't know anything about you, and you're a blank slate, and that they can in their minds, they can sort of attribute anything they want to you. If you open your mouth and you talk all about all kinds of things and you put your foot in your mouth, you make a fool of yourself and show your ignorance and have it on display, that can be bad. So what I would do is I would sort of be super friendly and like, you're not telling me if you're leading the team or you're just on the team. I'm not sure what the situation is. But if you're leading the team, the good thing to do is just to be super friendly, super approachable. And if people call you on your sort of technical competence and you have the chops, you can engage with that. If you don't, you could say the best thing, in my opinion, is not to sort of like downplay the fact that, you know, you don't understand what they're talking about. You don't have the technical skills. I would just admit it outright. I'd say like, well, you know, I don't have the technical experience that you do, but I have seen all these other situations where, you know, people have done this in different contexts. And based on my experience, I think this, you know, something like that. Right. So, I mean, the reality is that in most team type situations, the team leader is not going to be the technical authority on everything. It's just not possible. Sometimes you get people that are promoted to be, they were a technical role, they're a worker, then they become the supervisor, like, or a team leader, and they think they know more or as much as everyone else in the lead. The problem is that their knowledge starts to become outdated because it's been a while since they were in the role, and also you know, the role might have moved on. There might be updates to how you do it now. Maybe 5 years ago, you did it the way you're familiar with, but now people have moved on and they use different tools and they use different methods, and, you know, there's new rules in place, you know, things like this, right? So thinking that you know as much as your workers about the technical aspects of the role can be a big mistake, and it usually is. So remember, the role of the leader is not necessarily to be the technical authority on everything, okay? They rely on the workers to be the technical authorities on their own job, right? And what you do is you coordinate and you essentially address issues and things like this, right? That's your role. So it shouldn't really be a direct power struggle because you're not trying to do the same thing as the people on the team. You're trying to coordinate and you know, administer things, right? It's a different role. You know, so if you started off by saying, like, you know, trying to paint this image of like, oh, I'm the authority, you know, and if there's any technical questions, you address them to me because I'll set you straight. That might not be the best way to run that team, depending on the details. So I don't know if any of that helped, but that's kind of my thoughts on it. And there you go. We've gotten to the list of questions. If anyone does have any other questions, please ask them in the chat. If not, in about 5 minutes, I'm probably going to be winding this down. So I'm here every week on Mondays at the same time with just this general Q&A. So if anybody has any questions about job search. Once again, while we're waiting for questions, I just want to remind everyone I've got this course, the Get Hired course. I'm using the wrong screen, aren't I? It should be this one. I have the Get Hired course. It's basically my suggestions of how you should do a job search campaign from beginning to end with templates, step-by-step process. So if you are interested in that, there's a link in the description. I've also made a video that's also linked below in the description box that is like a Q&A that answers questions about that course specifically. So you know, you get some insight into what you're getting before you pull the trigger on it. So if you have any interest in that, no pressure, check out the link in the description. And also, I have one other course, this one here, the $100 MBA. That's about learning business. That gives you the same material that you would learn in a university MBA program. The catch is that it's all self-study. You get the textbooks and you read the books. And I have some videos where I sort of give a commentary on it. I talk about what I think is the most important part, some of the less important parts, and some additional material that has not been covered in the textbook, but is really useful to know based on my career experience. So that's what you get. And, it's like a tiny, tiny fraction of the price of an MBA. It is unaccredited because there are no assignments, no tests, at least no mandatory tests and assignments. You can do your own tests and assignments, but you don't have to hand anything in or anything like that. It's not certifying you. It's just supplying you with the knowledge if you want the knowledge. And the knowledge will serve you very well. It doesn't come from me. It comes from experts in all the different areas of management that have written the books. And these are the same books, the very same books that are used in places like Harvard and many other top business schools around the world. They use these exact books, so they're getting the same content. You don't have some 95-year-old professor reading it to you in class, but you can just read it yourself, but it's the same material. So if you have any interest in that, check it out. Link in the description. Well, I don't see a ton of questions coming in. There are 20 of you guys here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. I guess that's it for today. I will see you next week on another episode of How to Get Hired live Q&A. Thanks very much. Take care.